Have you ever watched certain people glide through life as if they've unlocked a secret, while the rest of us sprint nonstop, lungs burning, yet somehow never reach anything that feels real? Maybe you swallow your coffee without tasting it because your mind is already at the office. Maybe you nod through conversations while mentally drafting your next email. Maybe you've been living on fast forward for so long that stillness feels foreign, almost uncomfortable. If that hits a nerve, if your days feel like a checklist instead of a life, don't scroll away. This is the story of a woman who mastered speed, structure, and success and nearly suffocated under the weight of it. She believed optimization was power, that faster meant better, that efficiency was the cure for everything, until something painfully simple broke her illusion. Not a crisis, not a failure, just flour, water, and time. In a city obsessed with achievements before noon, a 28-year-old named Elena had engineered her existence into a flawless machine. Productivity wasn't a habit, it was her identity. Every minute scheduled, every move calculated, every breath justified. And yet, for all she was doing, she was losing everything that actually mattered. Elena was a project manager at a fast-moving tech firm, the kind of place where answering emails at dinner is normal and sleep is treated like an optional upgrade. She thrived there. Multitasking wasn't a skill, it was her oxygen. She could juggle 3 tasks while mentally queuing up the next 2. Her alarm rang at 5:30 a.m., workout video set to 1.5x speed, mind already running through her first meeting. Breakfast? A protein shake swallowed between replies. Commute, a classroom on wheels. Podcasts at double speed, always extracting, always optimizing. Time is the one currency you can't earn back, she liked to say, and she lived as if every second not monetized was stolen from her future. Lunch with coworkers meant laptop open. Sitting idle felt sinful, like burning cash. Dinner invitations were handled with surgical precision. Arrive on time, exit in 90 minutes. Another calendar block waited. Another objective. Another invisible finish line. She didn't read books. She mined summaries. She didn't watch films. She consumed documentaries for leverage. She had engineered her grocery shopping into a 14-minute mission, mapped aisle by aisle like a battlefield strategy. People admired her stamina, her output, her almost mechanical focus. She could accomplish in a day what others struggled with all week. What they didn't see, what Elena refused to see, was the cost. Somewhere in that endless acceleration, she had forgotten how to stand still without feeling guilty. She could be in a room and still be reaching for the next one, present physically, absent everywhere else. Her younger sister, Maya, an elementary school teacher with paint on her sleeves and patience in her voice, would sometimes look at her as if grieving someone who hadn't died, but had disappeared. Life isn't a race you win by collecting the most finish lines, Maya once told her gently. Elena smiled the polished smile she used in meetings. She spoke about maximizing potential, about seizing opportunity, about refusing mediocrity. The words sounded sharp and intelligent. But even as they left her mouth, they echoed hollow. And at night, in her spotless apartment, where everything had its assigned place, every file labeled, every surface clear, there was a silence she couldn't optimize, a stillness that no schedule could outrun. Her apartment looked like a showroom. Every object had a fixed position. Her calendar was color-coded 3 months ahead, a flawless mosaic of commitments, and yet something was missing. Sometimes a strange emptiness crept in. Not hunger, not exactly loneliness. It was deeper than that. A quiet, pulsing ache like she was racing through a life she had never actually stepped into. The collapse came on her 29th birthday. It should have been joyful. Instead, it was the crack in the glass. Her company organized a surprise party, the predictable kind. Fluorescent lights, grocery store cake, applause that felt rehearsed. Elena stood at the center of it, smiling on cue, surrounded by people who could recite her quarterly metrics but had no idea what she loved, feared, or dreamed about. And then it hit her. She had spent almost 30 years mastering performance, while forgetting how to care. A manager toasted her discipline. A teammate praised her perfect deadline record. The room clapped. But Elena felt detached, as if hovering near the ceiling, watching a stranger being celebrated. The traits they admired suddenly felt less like strengths and more like warning signs, symptoms of a life optimized into sterility. That night at 3 a.m., when the city finally went silent and there were no emails left to answer, no meetings to prepare for, no noise to hide behind, she broke. Sitting on her kitchen floor, laptop glowing against the dark, she scrolled through her immaculate task manager, hundreds of boxes checked, thousands of hours tracked, years categorized, labeled, completed, proof of relentless effort. And yet she couldn't recall a single moment in that endless archive that made her heart feel alive. Her chest tightened, not from stress, not from exhaustion, but from the terrifying realization that she had built a perfectly efficient life and forgotten to live inside it. Her breath turned thin and frantic, like she was suffocating in open air. For the first time in her adult life, Elena lost control. Later, a therapist would give it a clinical name, panic attack. But in that moment, it felt like something far more primal, like her body staging a rebellion, like every ignored signal finally screaming at once. At 3:15 a.m., with shaking hands, she called her sister. Her voice trembled in a way she hadn't allowed since childhood. Maya answered on the second ring, not groggy, not irritated, just there, fully there. The kind of presence you only have when you haven't trained yourself to mentally live in the next hour. "I don't know how to stop," Elena whispered. Silence lingered on the line. "Not empty, steady." Then Maya said quietly, "Maybe you need to learn from someone who never learned to rush." A pause. "Come with me in the morning. There's someone you need to meet." Before dawn had fully lifted, before the city restarted its daily frenzy, Maya led Elena down a narrow side street she had likely passed 1,000 times without noticing. There sat a small bakery, unassuming, warm, untouched by urgency. The air smelled of yeast and fire instead of ambition. Inside worked an elderly woman named Rosa. For 47 years, she had baked bread the same way. No shortcuts, no scaling hacks, just flour, water, salt, patience. Everyone called her Grandma Rosa. She was about 75, her hands etched with lines carved by decades of kneading dough and tending ovens. When Maya introduced Elena, Rosa looked at her, not at her clothes, not at her posture, not at the invisible resume she carried like armor. She looked through her. Past the precision, past the efficiency, past the carefully constructed identity, and straight into the tired, frightened woman hiding underneath it all. "Your sister says you've forgotten how to do just one thing," Grandma Rosa said softly, the kind of softness that comes from decades of waiting for dough to rise. Before Elena could launch into a polished explanation about time management or strategic focus, Rosa placed a smooth, warm ball of dough into her palms. "Then we begin here." The dough felt alive, warm, elastic, breathing in a way no screen or spreadsheet ever had. Rosa began to knead. Not fast, not optimized, each fold deliberate, each press complete, as if nothing else existed beyond her hands and the table. "Bread refuses to be rushed," she said calmly. "Yeast doesn't care about your calendar. It doesn't respect deadlines. It rises when it's ready." Her hands moved with quiet mastery, not mechanical, but attentive. The motion of someone who had done this tens of thousands of times and still treated it like the first. "If you force it," she continued, "you don't get bread sooner. You get bread that never becomes what it could have been." Elena tried to copy her, but even as she pressed the dough, her mind was racing, calculating how long this would take, what emails were waiting, what tasks were being delayed by her presence here. Her movements were sharp, efficient, impatient. 30 seconds in, Rosa gently covered Elena's hands with her flour-dusted ones. "You're not here," she said. The words weren't accusatory, they were factual. Your hands are working, but you've already left. You're planning, measuring, evaluating whether this is worth your time. She held Elena's gaze. "And when you're never fully here, you're never fully anywhere. You think you're doing many things. In truth, you're barely doing one." The bakery was quiet except for the faint crackle of the oven. For the first time in years, Elena had nothing to say. Something shifted inside Elena's chest. Not sharp, not violent. More like a window pried open after being sealed for years. Air rushing into a room she hadn't realized was suffocating. She looked down at the dough in her hands. It was already drying at the edges, neglected by her distracted grip. "How you do one thing," Grandma Rosa said quietly, "is how you live your whole life." The words didn't land like advice. They landed like a diagnosis. "Right now," Rosa continued, "you move like someone fleeing a fire. Fast, breathless, always scanning for the next exit. But have you ever stopped to check if there's actually a fire behind you? Or if you've just forgotten how to stand still? She motioned toward the wooden racks behind her. Dozens of loaves rested there, each one slightly different, slightly imperfect, golden, alive. They weren't flawless. They were attended to. For 47 years, Rosa went on, I've made bread this way. I measure carefully. I knead until my hands feel readiness, not until a clock orders me to stop. I let the dough rise as long as it asks, not as long as it's convenient. Her voice softened, and I bake it with the same focus I would give someone I love. Elena listened like someone who had just realized she'd been starving, not for success, not for achievement, but for depth. This isn't inefficiency, Rosa said firmly, seeing the silent objection forming. This is the only way anything meaningful is created. She stepped closer. You cannot rush growth, you cannot schedule presence, and you cannot split your attention into fragments and expect to feel whole. Her flour-covered fingers tapped lightly over Elena's heart. Because attention, real attention, is the rarest ingredient of all. Cannot be split without destroying the very thing that gives it power, Rosa finished. Then she placed another ball of dough into Elena's hands. For the next 30 days, you'll come here every morning before work, she said, and while your hands are in that dough, that is your entire world. No planning, no rehearsing, no calculating what comes next, just this. The rule sounded simple. It was brutal. On the first morning, Elena survived 45 seconds before her mind revolted. Her thoughts began firing like alarms, emails unanswered, meetings unprepared, opportunities slipping away. Her brain screamed that this was wasted time, that she was falling behind, that somewhere someone was getting ahead. She felt absurd, standing in a quiet bakery while the city accelerated without her. But she returned the next day, and the next. Partly because Maya kept showing up to drive her, partly because Rosa never praised her, never questioned her, never measured her improvement. She simply set out the dough and began working with that same unhurried rhythm, as if time itself had agreed to follow her lead. By the 7th day, Elena could hold her attention for 3 full minutes before it fractured. 3 minutes of feeling the texture change under her palms. 3 minutes of noticing warmth instead of racing thoughts. Rosa said nothing about milestones, nothing about growth. She just needed, steady, grounded, patient, as if she understood that transformation doesn't respond well to pressure. By day 14, something inside Elena's body began to soften. Her shoulders lowered from their permanent brace, her jaw unclenched, her breathing deepened on its own, no productivity hack required, and for the first time, she truly smelled the bakery. Warm yeast, toasted crust, flour in the air. It didn't smell like efficiency. It smelled like possibility. She had walked past this street 1,000 times before, yet only now was she actually inside it. The change began quietly, subtle. Then it spread, like yeast through dough, touching parts of her life she hadn't planned to change. At work, she started closing her laptop during meetings. No secret emails, no drafting responses while others spoke. She just listened, really listened, and something unexpected happened. Conversations deepened. Colleagues shared doubts, ideas, even fears they had never voiced before. When people felt heard instead of scanned, they opened. When Maya called, Elena stopped pacing and put the phone down. The first time she asked a thoughtful follow-up, something that proved she'd been fully present, her sister went silent, then cried softly. "You're here," Maya whispered. By day 23, Elena began arriving at the bakery 5 minutes early. Not to optimize, not to prepare, just to stand in the stillness. She realized she wanted to be there. That the quiet before the kneading began had become sacred, more valuable than any inbox at 0. She stopped timing the dough. Instead, she felt it. She learned the difference between elastic and resistant, between ready and forced. She developed a relationship with it, one that required awareness, not measurement. That shift from external metrics to internal knowing started bleeding into everything. Then on day 29, as her hands moved through the now familiar rhythm of fold and press, a startling truth surfaced. This was the first thing she had done in years that had no outcome attached. No KPI. No deadline. No way to win. No way to fail. Just flour, water, time, presence. And strangely, almost absurdly, this unproductive ritual had become the most productive force in her life, because in doing one simple thing completely, she was slowly rebuilding everything else. Not faster, but deeper. On the 30th morning, Grandma Rosa placed a loaf of bread into Elena's hands. It wasn't flawless. The crust curved slightly to one side. The surface carried small, honest imperfections. But it was perfect. Perfect because every fold, every pause, every rise had been given her full attention. No rushing, no splitting her focus, no silent countdown ticking in the background. Rosa wrapped the warm loaf in paper and looked at her with quiet pride. "You thought I was teaching you to slow down," she said gently. "I wasn't." She held Elena's gaze. "I was teaching you to be here." She brushed flour from her palms. Slowness is about speed. Presence is about wholeness. You can move quickly and still be present, but you cannot be present while your mind is scattered in 20 directions. In that moment, Elena understood why it had taken 30 mornings. This wasn't a lesson you could download. It wasn't a mindset hack. It wasn't a technique to stack onto an already crowded system. It had to be practiced again and again until it stopped being something you performed and became something you embodied. "How you do one thing is how you do everything," Rosa repeated softly. "For 30 days, you practice giving one task your complete attention. Now your body knows what that feels like. And once you know that feeling," she smiled, "you can't pretend you don't. Because after you've experienced true presence, returning to a fractured, hurried life feels different. The cost becomes visible. So let me ask you something. If you're listening to this while scrolling, if your mind is already planning the next video before this one ends, if you've optimized your schedule so thoroughly that you've edited out stillness, hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not wasting your life. You are not failing. You are simply scattered. And the cure is not more speed. It is attention. Start with one thing today, one conversation, one meal, one breath. Give it your full presence, not because it's efficient, not because it advances you, but because it is yours. And you might discover what Elena did, that a life rebuilt slowly, deliberately, completely, is the only life that ever truly feels lived. You are not falling behind by choosing depth over speed. Doing one thing fully instead of 10 things halfway isn't laziness. It's power. Because the richness of your life is shaped far more by the quality of your attention than by the length of your achievement list. Presence isn't a reward you unlock after you've completed everything. It's the ground everything meaningful stands on. So here's the invitation. Not another goal, not another box to check, but an experiment in being alive instead of merely efficient. Pick one ordinary ritual you already rush: making coffee, washing a plate, walking to your car, folding clothes. For 7 days, give that single act your undivided attention. Not to improve it, not to master it, not to turn it into a productivity strategy, but to practice being fully somewhere. When your thoughts drift to your schedule, as they will, don't scold yourself. Just return, gently, to the heat of the water, the scent of coffee, the weight of fabric in your hands. Come back to what is real, because life is not waiting for you on the other side of completion. It isn't hiding behind an empty inbox or a perfected plan. It's here, inside the moment you usually hurry through. If you saw yourself in Elena's breathless pace, if you felt that quiet ache of being everywhere except where you stand, share this with someone who is exhausted from chasing. Or save it for the day you feel yourself scattering again, not to compete, not to compare, but to remember together that the only place we ever truly live is now. The lesson was never complicated. How you do one thing is how you live your life. Rush through everything and you'll rush past your own existence. Fragment your attention and your days will feel fragmented too. So choose presence. Practice attention. Be here. This moment will never repeat.